different books of the Bible. In their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. The lover of money will not be satisfied with money, nor the lover of wealth with gain. This also is vanity. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? May God add blessing to the reading, hearing, and living of this holy word this day. Thanks be to God.
Beginning a sermon series based on a book by Adam Hamilton called Enough. And this is leading up to this time of year when we look forward to the year that's coming. It's not going to be too far away. We're start a new month of November, which means we're within the last 2 months of this year, and so we're looking ahead at what ministries and what outreach our church might do, and as part of that, we think about how we all might give of our time and talent and our treasure and our witness, and how we might live into the faith that we profess. And so I wanted to talk about these next few weeks about how we might live more simply, how we might give more generously, and how we might learn to be content. We live in a world that contentment is hard to come by, I think. And so hopefully we'll be able to discover some things that we maybe haven't thought about before, and how we might learn to live and be content. And so each week there'll be a little insert. It'll have a couple of questions for you to take and maybe discuss with someone down the road during the week, or as a reminder to yourself during your time of prayer each day. And then a prayer will be there for you, and offer that just as a resource if it's something that you would like to use for the prayer for the week. So several years ago, there was a credit card offered. In fact, it was a gold MasterCard offered to Monty Baker. And this credit card came with $20,000 credit limit, which is pretty impressive. I don't know about you, but I've never had a $20,000 credit limit on a credit card before. And it's even more amazing because this was the first time that Monty Baker had ever had a credit card. It's particularly also interesting because Monty Baker is a Shih Tzu dog. So Monty's owner got an advertisement offering Monty a card, and so he sent it in, and sure enough, Monty got a card back. And then Monty's owner thought, well, he could use the card to purchase some of Monty's favorite toys and, treats, but then realized that Monty probably was not going to be able to pay that back when the balance came due, and he says he didn't want to negatively impact Monty's credit rating. So this is a funny story, and one that's almost too funny to believe, but it illustrates an important thing for us today. It reminds us that there's a lot of folks out there, a lot of companies that want to encourage us to live beyond our means. Buy now, pay later. That's the mantra that they give us. And they want us to spend and spend and spend and satisfy that craving that we have for things that we can't afford right now. Just pay for it a little bit at a time later. What they don't tell you is that you often pay many, many times more than what that thing is that you purchased on credit. And oftentimes, and I have to say I've had this experience, I am paying off a credit card and I can't even remember what I bought. So credit card debt is one of those things that we have to be wary of. But we all need to admit, I'll just pretend that this is just about me. I need to admit that I like stuff. I like gadgets. I'm particularly drawn to music and books. If I had more money, I'd have more cars because I like cars. And I know some of you, don't be laughing, it's you too. And I know that there are lots of us out there who want the latest and best stuff that's on the market, right? You have to have that new phone, that new iPad, that new whatever it is that's the next thing, next new thing. And fingers at someone else or before you give an elbow to a partner or spouse, remember, this is not about them, this is about you. And because I think we all would need to admit, and I know because of your laughter, that you all have had that experience of having to have something so badly that you would do almost anything to have it. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't buy things that we want to have. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, have new things or nice things. I'm just saying that in our society today, I think we forget that there's a balance that we have to maintain between the stuff that we acquire and that we think we need and the stuff that we really need to have. And our material possessions begin to possess us, is what they say. I want us to focus on, again, on how God is speaking to you as an individual, not to someone else, and this isn't to judge anyone else or even to judge you, but simply to get us to think about how our spending and how our thinking of spending and buying sometimes begins to overtake the other things that we need to be doing in our lives. And not to lay blame, but we live in a country that has what people call the American dream. This is a place where people want to come because you can be anything, you can do anything, you can have anything. And this is the American dream. This is what started our country. Our founding fathers came because they had a dream of being able to do whatever it is that they wanted to do with their faith and with their government. And so this pursuit of happiness, this pursuit of the American dream has become just bred into us, not even conscious really of why it is that we do the things that we do, but oftentimes it goes back to that very first idea of the American dream. And we have to be honest and remind ourselves that we often measure our success by how much stuff we have. If you have a nice car, a nice house, or those kinds of things, they become prestige symbols. And it's hard sometimes to get beyond that. There was a French political philosopher and historian that visited the United States in the mid-1800s. And he made an observation about America and democracy in America, and I'm going to read this, quote to you, this thing that he wrote about the United States. And remember now, this was written just after his visit in 1835 to the United States. He wrote this, and this is Alex de Tocqueville, in case you're interested. He said, "Americans are extremely eager in the pursuit of immediate material pleasures, and are always discontented with the position that they occupy. They think about nothing but ways of changing their lot and bettering it. For people in this frame of mind, every new way of getting wealth more quickly, every machine which lessens work, every means of diminishing the cost of production, every invention which makes pleasure easier and greater seems the most magnificent accomplishment of the human mind. One usually finds that the love of money is either the chief or secondary motive at the bottom of everything the Americans do. This gives a family likeness to all their passions and soon makes them wearisome to contemplate." 1835, folks. We have a long history of wanting stuff, wanting more and better things that change how much time we spend doing things that enhance our position in life. And I think that we haven't lost that zest and zeal for having more things. Consuming and acquiring and buying has become the American dream. And for some people, the American dream has become the American nightmare. Because in order to keep up, keep up with the Joneses thing, it puts people in terrible positions financially. There's two things that professionals out there in the world say causes this American nightmare, American dream turned nightmare to happen. And the first thing that they say that causes this, they call these diseases. This first one is called affluenza. I know you've heard of it. Affluenza is a disease that causes the constant need for more and bigger and better stuff. There was even a defense in a trial of two young men who did some really horrible things. Their defense was affluenza. The that they had become so disengaged from the real world because of their wealth that they could not be found guilty of this thing that they had done. There was a program on PBS about affluenza, and this PBS special described or gave the definition of affluenza as this. They say it's the bloated, sluggish, and unfulfilled feeling that results from efforts to keep up with the Joneses. It's an epidemic of stress, overwork, waste, and indebtedness caused by the dogged pursuit of the American dream. It's an unsustainable addiction to economic growth. All of us have been affected by this virus from one time or another and to one degree or another. And if we're honest, we can say that I think that we have struggled at one time or another with the desire to acquire. I'm going to get that put on a bumper sticker. The desire to acquire. And there's no secret. If you want to ask what America's favorite pastime is, shopping is right up there at the top of the list. But we have to be realistic. You know, our economy is dependent upon consumer spending. So there's that. And the amount of spending that happens is a measure of the strength of any nation. So spending is an important part of how we survive and how the world exists. And we certainly know that billions of dollars are spent every year in television and print and online advertising because companies want us to be convinced that there's something else that we need. And they're good at it. They become like voices whispering in our heads, fueling what is already in there, those desires that we have and those thinkings that we have, is that I really do need that. And there's that voice from the advertiser saying, yes, you do need that. And we have acquired so much stuff that we even have to rent storage space outside of our house to put our stuff. The average size of a house went from 1,660 square feet, 1,660 square feet in 1973 to 2,600 square feet, 1,000 more feet in a house by 2015. So we've increased our house size by 1,000 square feet. And yet, storage space in the United States continues to increase. There is currently estimated to be 2.3 billion square feet of storage space available in the United States. If you don't think we have more stuff than we need, those people are getting rich off of our stuff being stored. So, affluenza, very debilitating disease. The next thing that they say, this other disease that causes us problems, is called credititis. Maybe you have had credititis. It's that, as I said, buy now, pay later idea. You know, those old sayings when they first started with credit, same months, same amount, 6 months from now, as if you paid cash. So that sounds like a good deal, right? Pay now, pay in 6 months, same as cash. And so we're lulled into the idea that we can have things that we need and want now rather than paying for them now. So this concept of credititis feeds into our desire that we have for instant gratification. And more Americans, and I suppose this happens around the world too, but more and more Americans are going deeper and deeper in debt in order to have what they want now and try to pay for it later. They say that the average credit card debt in the United States in 1990 was around $3,000. Today, it's over $15,000. And remember, this is an average, so there's a lot more debt out there than that. And so we've come to a time when, and there's some things that are hard to save up for, to purchase. You know, a house is one of those, you know, home mortgages, cars are way too expensive most times to buy unless you're really wealthy to pay cash. But we have a lot of folks who have found themselves going into debt with home equity loans because they take out that money from the house that they've already paid on, but they still have to pay that back. And so we've just become so consumer-oriented that we forget that each little bit of ourselves is going away as we give away our time for money. The savings rate in the United States in 1982 was at 10%, so people saved about 10% of their income. 25 years later, it's under 1%. We don't have savings anymore. This is the American dream turned nightmare. And you know who have big businesses these days is debt collectors and lawyers who handle bankruptcy cases. And you know what? The number one cause for divorce is financial issues. So finance is a big part of our lives, but it causes us all sorts of problems when we don't consume in reasonable ways. Our addiction to consumption and buying and our desire to have more is never satisfied. And the reason that is because there's really a deeper problem. There's a spiritual issue that lies beneath the surface of these diseases of affluenza and credititis. And it's not a new idea, and it's not a new problem. It's been a part of humanity from the beginning of time. You know, the whole Garden of Eden story is a story of wanting more, right? More than what was allowed to them. Wanting more. And so it's always a problem with wanting more. And so inside of us, I believe that there underlies this need that we have for stuff is a brokenness in us, you could say. That we're continually trying to find something to fill up the emptiness in us, thinking that stuff will do that. But remember, we were created in the image of God. And I think that image of God has been distorted a bit because we turn the desire that we should have for God in our lives into a desire to have stuff, to amass more wealth. And I think that God created us to be people who were loving and kind and caring, and instead we become people who constantly compete with each other to see who can one up and who can be better than the other. And I think that we were created for joy, but we're so busy trying to accumulate things, pursuing money, that we forget to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. I believe that we were meant to be generous and to share with those in need, but we have become selfish with our resources, with our time. The American dream has become an American nightmare for many. Did you know that, and I hadn't thought about this until I read this, that 3 of the 7 deadly sins relate directly to the problem of having money and possessions too much of. First, we're afflicted by envy or covetousness. We want what others have. I mean, it's one of the 10 commandments, come on, so it's a big deal. And we will do whatever it takes to get what we want. Some people don't want to buy it, they instead steal it, take it, because of that desire to have what someone else has. And then we're afflicted by greed, the desire to want more and more and not to want to share what we have. And the third thing is that we're afflicted by gluttony. Now, I always thought that gluttony was about food, eating too much. But when we consume, and that means when we buy things, more and more things, we're gluttonous. When we want to have more and more stuff, that's gluttony. It's trying to buy more and more stuff until we make ourselves sick with stuff. We spend so much of our time and energy and thoughts on acquiring things that we don't have any energy left to nurture the spirit and the soul of ourselves that God intends for us to nurture. And so we remain immature in our faith because we just want that next thing. So what's the answer? Well, I hope in the next few weeks that we'll look at how we might combat this idea of needing more. And we'll look at biblical teachings about how we can change our habits and how we can handle our money and our possessions in a more suitable way so that we can pursue the faithful things that we need to pursue. And how then, with that understanding, how we might live more simply and how we might give more generously and how we might learn to be content. And the starting of that is a transformation of our hearts. We need a changed heart in order to be able to sense a change of purpose that we need to have. And so every day we need to begin by asking God, what do you want me to be today? What's the person that you want me to be today? And ask God for guidance in how you might live that out. Picture yourselves as agents for God, not looking at what you can acquire, but looking at how you can live simply and generously. If we allow God to work in us through Christ, we'll be able to sense a higher calling, one that doesn't require that we have more stuff in our lives to make us feel as though we are being fulfilled. We'll look at the things that we acquire in a different kind of way. And I think the key part of this is understanding about how it is that we can be living more simply. There's a site that I, you know how it is when you go to Facebook and you look at something, then suddenly it appears over and over again. I don't know if you Facebook people know that. Anyway, so there was a site that came up, and it's called simplicityLiving.com, I think is what it is. Or minimalistliving.com, something like that. And I get a little note every morning from them because I went and looked at the site. And basically it's talking about how easy it is if you just think for a moment about the things that you already have, what joy or happiness they bring to you, and what is it that's necessary for you to have this quality of life that you really desire, one that feels as if you're being fulfilled. And so I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't buy things. I don't want you to say that, think that, and I'm not suggesting that we need to, you know, wear sackcloth and ashes and, beat ourselves with whatevers. I'm just saying that we need to think about how it is that we think about the things that we own before they begin, as they say, to own us. So that when we put our budgets together, that the first thing that we do is we budget in a way to be loving and generous. And that when we think about the money that we spend, that we first think about how it is that this is going to impact our lives, not just today, but tomorrow and the week after and the month after and the year after. Is that still going to be important to me? And I think there's many gifts that we can discover by learning to live more simply. There's a sect of Christians that are called Shakers. Maybe you've heard of them. They're known for their simple living. One of the things that they also do is they do make great furniture, and the reason that people are attracted to it is because it's unembellished, but well made. And it's beautiful, and so people love it. But they're also known for their songs and for their worship and their dancing. They later got their name because they would shake when they worshiped. But there's a well-known Shaker song called Simple Gifts. It was written in 1848 by their elder Joseph Brackett. And it's a song that they sing when they worship, they sing it when they dance, and I think it captures the invitation to simplicity that I hope we can all embrace. And it says, "'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning, we come out right." When we simplify our lives, we will be able to enjoy what we have, we will be able to give more generously, and in doing these things, I believe that we will find joy and contentment, the things that God wants most for us.